Okay.
You can remember that.
All right. Because I knew one time you told me about that you had a certain way to learn that. And what I want to instill on while I'm teaching this, I'm going to bring these up every Sunday. I'm sure most of us can name them all, or maybe few of them. But what I'd like to do, this way, if we look at this every Sunday, we should get them down, and then by the end of the period, hopefully, we can know the whole Ten Commandments. Let's go through. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. And thou shalt not covet. When we looked 2 weeks ago, I began with God gave the Ten Commandments for the personal well-being of his people. And in Exodus chapter 2, verse 2, where it says, God said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. While I'm thinking about it too, Bill Strait was here on Wednesday, most of the day, I think all day long, helping these guys out. And a big thank you goes out to Bill on this. And I'm sure Mike was in on it too, and we want to thank Mike for all he has done too. So thank you guys for helping us out and putting these videos in. I just wanted to make you know. God had already redeemed us, the people, and brought them out of slavery. And now He was giving them the rules that would govern their lives. Never is it that keeping the law would resolve sin, and nowhere in the Bible is the idea that we can earn approval by the law. Also, we see that the Israelites, already being redeemed at this point, had the law and was given personal well-being. Jesus said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. You see that in John 14:15. So how do we show our love for Christ? Each of us have a way of showing our love for Christ. Being here this morning, you are showing your love for Christ. When we're doing things for others, we are showing love for Christ. We continually show our love for Christ. Also, we do it by what God tells us to do. We're told that all through Scriptures that God tells us how to live a Christian life, how to do the things He wants us to do. Also, if you have any questions or comments during this, please speak up and give them. Moses led Sinai, where he was given the Ten Commandments, as well as the rest of that law that would govern God's people until the formation of the church. When God called Moses in Genesis chapter 3, Moses was unwilling to go, and he felt unqualified for the job that was required of him. Once he listened to God, and though he followed God's instructions, Moses became the greatest leader in history. Just before we closed last time, we read Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 20. And we saw that those were the Ten Commandments, and we read about the Ten Commandments. This morning, though, I want us to look at the summary of Exodus chapter 19, 20, and chapter 34. We're going to look at that. Also, we're going to look at Deuteronomy 5, chapter 5, verse 1 through 33, and also chapter 6. Also, we're going to look at the major points in these texts. And what was the purpose of the law? You're probably thinking, man, Randy, when are you going to get to the Ten Commandments? Well, we're going to get to the Ten Commandments, but I kind of wanted to build up to this point to where Moses went there and build this up to where we can remember where the Ten Commandments were. First, let's look at chapters 19 and 20, the summary of the Exodus. And if you remember, well, we didn't read chapter 19, but let me give you a brief rundown on it. In Exodus chapter 19, the people of Israel reached out in the desert of Sinai on the first day of the third month after being free from Egypt. The Israelites, they set up camp there and in front of the mountain of Mount Sinai also. The Lord called out to Moses and he told him, he said, the people of Israel that he has brought them out of Egypt and drawn them closer to him. So then if we obey his commands and we are kept a covenant with God, he would make them a holy nation, a kingdom distinct from others. Moses, he also summoned the elders and told the people there of Israel of what God had told him to do. Also, we see that the Israelites said that they would obey the commandments of God. When Moses told God, this is what he received with further instructions from the Lord. He was also told that the people of Israel, that the Lord will come down in a form of a cloud so that people would put their trust in him. Also, after this, the Lord told Moses to tell the Israelites to concentrate themselves and keep off the mountain for 3 days. And anyone, and that was anyone, who touched even the foot of that mountain would be put to death. And on the morning of that same third day, there was a loud thunder and flashes of lightning, and everyone in the camp trembled with fear. And Moses went out to meet God as the Lord descended into fire and upon the mountain. And the Lord went up to the mountain and told Moses, and he went there too. Any questions or comments on the first 19, on chapter 19? Okay. Let's go into chapter 20 now. 20 is where the Ten Commandments are. This is where you find all of the Ten Commandments. And the Lord had spoken the words to Moses, which were the laws that the Israelites were to obey. The first commandments was for there to be no other God before you. He himself, who had delivered the people of Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, he also told them that they should not make any graven images of him from any type of material. Also, additionally, God commanded that nobody was to use the Lord's name in vain or use it improperly. God also told the people of Israel to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. He explained that he made the land, he made the seas, and he had everything in 6 days. On the seventh day, we know that he rested. He wanted his people to be honored on the Sabbath day. And similarly, and refrained from working on this day. I know I talked to a few of you, and I know for me, I don't usually work on Sunday. That's my day of rest too. But I know I've talked to a few of you, and you guys, some of you work on Sunday also. You work 7 days a week. And that's good also. But I guess as I was growing up and that, I guess just took it easy for Sunday. But I have, in instance, worked a few Sundays. So I guess you could say I'm working today. But I'm doing something I enjoy. The other commandments of the Lord followed. These included commands for people to honor their father and their mother, and were not to murder, and not commit adultery, and bear false witness, and steal or covet. But these people were frightened, very frightened. When these people of Israel saw the thunder and the lightning, they were afraid. Can you imagine them being able to see this with all this going on? They told Moses to tell them what God had said instead of having the Lord speak directly to them. They were afraid that they would die if this would happen. Moses also told them not to fear. Don't fear. And that the Lord only came on to test them. The fear of God that was upon them would keep them from sinning. Also, God gave further instructions on offerings and building at the altar that was suitable for worship. He told Moses that the people of Israel should not make idols. They're made of silver or gold, and they should not worship anything else but Him and Him alone. Now let's look over at Exodus chapter 34. Well, we're going to go over there for a few minutes in Exodus 34. Just to give you a little background of that. We're going to read this. We're going to read verses 1 through 4. And then we're going to drop down to 27 through 35. But let's start at Exodus chapter 34, verse 1. And the Lord said to Moses, "Cut 2 tablets of stone, like the first ones, and I will write these tablets on the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. So be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai, and present yourself to me there on the top of the mountain. And no man shall come up with you, and let no man be seen throughout all the mountain. Let neither flocks nor herds feed before the mountain." So he cut the 2 tablets of stone like the first ones. Then Moses rose early in the morning and went up to Mount Sinai, as the Lord had commanded him. And he took in his hand into 2 tablets of stone. Starting with verse 27. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write these words, for according to the tenor of these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel." So he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He neither ate bread nor drank water. And he wrote on the tablets and the words of the covenant of the 10 Commandments. Now it was so, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and the 2 tablets of the testimony were in Moses' hand. And when he came down from the mountain, that Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone while he talked with them. So when Aaron and all of his children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. And then Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned to him. And Moses talked with them, and afterwards all the children of Israel came near. And he gave them as the commandments all that the Lord had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. And then Moses had finished speaking with them. He put the veil on his face. But whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he would take the veil off until he came out. And he would come out and speak to the children of Israel for whatever he had been commanded. And whenever the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, the skin of Moses' face shone. Then Moses would put the veil on his face again until he went to speak with him again. So, let's look at a few things in Matthew chapter 34 that I read there. This was kind of called a renewal stage. for God's covenant with the Israelites. The Lord also told Moses to make new tablets to replace the old ones that he threw to the ground earlier. Also, God's commandments remained the same as before, but he wanted Moses to go alone to the summit of Mount Sinai to receive his instructions once again. So Moses took the two stone tablets, which he had handcrafted like the first, went up to the mountain where he stayed for 40 days and 40 nights. It goes on to say, before receiving that law from the Lord, Moses fasted. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Some Christians wonder at the notion of fasting for 40 days. They say that it's not impossible. And it's not impossible. Medical supervision says that people can make it 40 days with water only. In here. Is that true, Lisa? 40 days and 40 nights. Can we live 40 days and 40 nights without food?
Without food, yes. Without water, no.
Without water, no. We have to have that water, right? What's that?
You'd be extremely sick at the end of the 40 days. If you're drinking, you might
Okay. All right. See, that's the thing about having a nurse in here.
Randy,
Yes.
several years ago, there was a man in prison that was protesting, and he fasted for 40 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's as long as they would let him go, 40 days.
Right.
I mean, he lost weight. He didn't look good after the fasting 40 days, but he was alive.
And you'd be extremely sick after you started eating too. So
What's that?
I said you would be very ill after you started eating again. You would remain very ill for a while.
Okay.
It's not a small feat.
I know I watched the show Survivor. I don't know how many watch Survivor, but a lot of times you see them talking about them going without eating. They give them rice every once in a while. Or, if they win a reward challenge or something like that, they get something to eat too. But they don't eat very often. And if you look at them at the beginning of the show, they're on there like 26, 28 days, something like that. But I've heard some of them say that they lost up to 20 pounds of not eating. So that's quite a bit. I mean, if I miss one meal, I'm hungry. I tell Sue, I says, boy, I sure would like something to eat. I'm hungry. So she gives me a piece of cheese. So I do get a piece of cheese every now and then. But the thing of it is that Moses went 40 days, and he went 40 nights without eating, but would probably had drink with that. Bud?
It's getting away from what you're talking about right now a little bit, but for those that have a hard time remembering where the Ten Commandments can be found, there's two simple math equations you can remember. Ten Commandments are listed twice in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, and always remember that the number 10 represents the Ten Commandments.
Okay.
The first math equation is 2 times 10. 2 being the second book, Exodus, times the Ten Commandments, can be found in the 20th chapter.
Okay.
And the second one is 5 plus 5 equals 10 Commandments. Fifth book, Deuteronomy, 5th chapter.
Okay.
10 Commandments. Just
Practice your song for next week, because we're going to have you do your song for the Ten Commandments song. Or we'll just let you have the Ten Commandments.
Has a purpose and needs to be respected and recognized, because Moses didn't just fast for 40 days to eat nothing. He had a purpose for fasting, and the purpose for fasting was to
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not to
No.
acquire things.
Right.
Fasting is a very thing, and many Christians fast even today, but they got to realize that the fasting is not to lose weight, and is not to acquire anything physically, or not physically, materialistically,
Right.
but it's to prepare one's mind and put one into the state of mind of being with God.
Right. Right. And we need to stress that he didn't do that because of wanting to lose weight, that, he had a purpose with it also. God said he would write the same words on the new tablets, which he did with his finger. Now, Bud was just talking about this. Deuteronomy chapter 5, 1 through 33. I want us to take a look at that. And like last week, we looked at Exodus chapter 20. Now we're going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 5. And I'm going to read that. And it's kind of what they call a review. And Moses called out to all Israel, and he said to them, "Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the judgments which I speak in your hearing today, that you may learn them and be careful to observe them. The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. The Lord did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, and those who are here today, all of us who are alive. The Lord talked with you face to face on the mountain from the midst of the fire. I stood between the Lord and you at the time to declare to you the word of the Lord. For you are afraid because of the fire, and you did not go to the mountain," he said. "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the water underneath the earth. You shall not bow down to them that serve them, for I am the Lord your God, and I'm a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children of the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless with take his name in vain. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor any of your cattle, nor stranger who is within your gates, that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. And remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there by a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep your father and mother, as the Lord your God has commanded you, that your days will be long, and that it may be well with you in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your house, his field, his that is your neighbor. Lord spoke to all of your assembly in the mountains from the midst of the fire and the thick darkness with a loud voice. And he added no more. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. So it was, when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, that came near to me, all the heads of the tribes and the elders. And you said, surely the Lord our God has shown us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. We have seen this day that God speaks with man, yet he still lives. Now, therefore, why should we die? For this is great fire and will consume us. If we hear the voice of the Lord our God any more, then we shall die. For who is there of all flesh who has heard the voice of the living God, speaking the midst of the fire, as we have and lived? You go near and hear that the Lord our God may say, and tell us that the Lord our God says to you, and we will hear and do it. Then the Lord heard the voice of your words when you spoke to me. And the Lord said to me, I have heard the voice of the words of this people, which they have spoken to you. They are right in all that they have spoken, all that they have such a heart in them that they would fear me and always keep all my commandments, that it might be well with them and with their children forever. Go and say to them, return to your tents. But as for you, stand here by me, and I will speak to you all the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which you shall teach them, that they may observe them in the land in which I am giving them to possess. Therefore you shall be careful to do the Lord your God has commanded you. You shall not turn aside to the right hand or the left. You shall walk in the ways which the Lord your God has commanded you, that you may live and that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days in the land in which you possess. So let's do a little summary on that one to see. So we must understand why God's reasons for giving the Ten Commandments in order to gain the greatest benefit from them. Moses spoke to all the Israelites and told them to learn all of God's decrees and laws, as well as always to follow them. He also told them that the Lord had made a covenant with the Horebs. We look at God's love and we look at his wrath. Moses reminded them that their Lord was a jealous God, and we see this throughout the Bible. That they would punish the children for all of their sins of their parents to the fourth generation of those that hated God. And the Lord would show love to the 1,000 generations for everyone that had loved God and kept his commandments. Moses tells us that the Israelites about the Ten Commandments and explains them to him, and he says that we were given to him on the stone tablets by God. We also see that Moses reminds us that he had stood between the Israelites and God because they were too scared of the fire, and they would not go up to the mountain. We also seen that the elders and the leaders told Moses to tell them what God had told them. They said that they would listen and they would obey. He says that the Lord heard everything. He heard everything that they had to say to Moses. The Lord was pleased with what they had told Moses. They had told Moses that they would keep all of God's commandments. And then Moses, the things that would go well from the Israelites and for their children too, as long as they obeyed these commandments. But we have to understand something. We need to understand that God's reasons for giving these Ten Commandments in order to gain the greatest benefit from them. With a careful study of the present passages, it tells us why God gave the law. So again, why did God give the Ten Commandments? The scripture for that is Deuteronomy chapter 5, 22 through 33. And as we read this prior, and I won't go through it again, but you'll find the answer to that here. But there was two terrifying events that happened. The people were witnessing the awesome sight of God's glory and His majesty. And also they were actually hearing the booming voice of God Himself declare the Ten Commandments. Both struck a deep sense of unworthiness in the people. They also came keenly aware of the vast difference, the enormous gulfs between God, man, and the mass difference that there was between God's holy nation and man's sinful nation. Also between God's awesome power and what helplessness before that power, between what God is like and what man is like. We also see in this is that the sight of God's majestic glory and the hearing of God's booming voice revealed a startling fact to the people. And there was a great gulf between the man and God, and the people sensed the gulf deeply. So they were aware of God's holiness and their sinfulness, so aware of the vast difference between God's awesome person and His humanity, that they did not want God to speak directly to them anymore. So we look in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 19, and it says they all feared some pronouncement of judgment upon them. So the point of all this together is this, is that they sensed the need for a mediator, for a person to approach God, for them, a person who could represent them before God. And they wanted God's messenger to be their mediator. They wanted Moses to approach God, to receive God's message, and then to bring message back to them. We also want to note this, is that the people promised that they would hear and obey the word of God. And that was in Deuteronomy 5 and 19 also. So we see that the person that obeys God's commands will live, prosper, and prolong his days in the promised land of God in Deuteronomy 5 and 33. He lives a victorious life, experiences the fullness of life, and conquer all the enemies that seek to defeat and destroy him. So the instructions to the Israelites from Moses was that the Lord told Moses that the Israelites should go back to their tents and they should stay. And the Lord gave Moses all of the decrees, the laws, and the commandments. And the Lord Moses that he was to teach them to the Israelites, and they had to follow them in their inherited land. Finishing up here before class ends, Moses tells the Israelites to be careful and to follow all of God's commandments. So Moses tells them to be obedient to everything that God has commanded them, so they could live and they could prosper and be in the days of their inherited land. We're going to pick up here next week. We're going to be looking at major points in our text, and we'll be looking at these. So go back to Exodus chapter 20. Go back to Deuteronomy chapter 5, and we're going to pick out some verses in there that are major texts that we should know and to look at on that. I know I flew through a lot of it. There's a lot of stuff to comprehend, to take in. Is there any questions, comments that anybody wants to add to this? No? All right. Well, thank you, and I appreciate it.